So I wanted to kind of kick off the pod and, really get to know your history in terms of like falling in love with acting and kind of the creative arts. Obviously, you're a notable voice actor, so I'm curious, how you eventually, stumbled upon voice acting and what were kind of the experiences that helped you get there.
Mm. So for me, gosh, so I was always kind of like on the shyer side. I guess I still kind of am. But especially in like grade school, I was kind of just always really like mute in class. And when I was in middle school, we had an elective that would rotate to something different every quarter. And one of the last one happened to be theater. And we got to learn like a bunch of different like little things like how to work the lights, what it's like to be on stage, to write, to like, act in our own stuff. I thought it was so fun and creative and something new that I've never experienced before. That I liked it so much that I signed up for it to be my elective the following year, and then continuing on into high school. Um, it was just kind of fun. I love costumes. Yeah, I love like getting to putting on like another person and getting to be them and experience life through their eyes. I think because it stems from like my love of reading. I always read a lot as a kid, and in a way, this was like a way of like sharing and expressing these characters and these stories with other people. And so, since after that, I continued on into college. I studied theater there, and while I was in college, this was around the time that I really started getting into watching anime a lot. And I was watching one, and I was like, "Oh, it'd be really cool if I could like, you know." Maybe do a voice in it, like merge my two passions. I had no idea how to get into it at all. I did kind of like just brought it up with some friends. We happened to be in rehearsal at the time, and one of them was like, "Hey, I've heard about this voice acting competition at Anime Expo. Maybe you should look into it. Maybe you can." I think like the winner from last year got to be in an anime or something like that. So I was like, "Okay, cool." So I looked it up, and luckily there was still time to sign up for the auditions at the time before the cutoff. It's very different than how they've structured to what it's like now. So at the time, I had to like find a monologue and then memorize it and then show up at the convention and then recite it to a room of people. I was so nervous, but I didn't really expect to get anything out of it, like, other than the experience of like going through the motions of it. And like while I was like there, I was already planning, okay, what am I going to do next year? Okay, at least I'll have a whole year to like really look through a bunch of anime to like get something really interesting to work on. And during that process, they called me up as one of the finalists, which I wasn't really expecting. And even though I ultimately didn't win, they still liked me enough that they brought me into the studio for like a little tour and to audition for them. So it's, even though I didn't win, it's kind of like I did unofficially. And that's kind of how I got started into voice acting. I didn't know that much about it at the time. Um, I really just went straight into it, but I'm glad that I had at least acting experience through theater that was able to kind of like translate over into voiceover. But yeah, so I guess that's kind of how I got into it. The more like I did it, especially for dubbing, it's a lot more technical than maybe other forms of voiceover. But I started taking a lot of classes and then really getting into the voiceover side of it, really starting to learn people in the industry. And, it's a lot of it's getting advice from them and things like that.
There was one thing that stuck out to me was when you said theater, you felt like theater translated in terms to translated towards your preparation for that moment. And I'm curious what you think, looking back, were the things about theater that really helped you shine, right? Like in front of the judges, right? Just because obviously you didn't know it at the time, right? And it sounded like you were already thinking about, preparing for uh, anime next year, like anime voiceover next year to get more preparation. And it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you surprised the judges, right? Maybe you surprised yourself, like as well, right? In terms of like, wow, I actually can do it, right? Like it's not like I need to wait, any longer, sort of thing.
Yeah. So, um, for me, I think because I had experience with trying to look for compelling monologues, I always had a really tough time looking for them in like scripts. But because I had been watching enough anime, and I also like was asking friends for recommendations, and I was watching through them and trying to look for something that was a little bit dynamic and fun. So I found a piece that was comedic. She had moments where she was being very cute, and then moments where she was very angry and very big. And so it had like a lot of levels, ups and downs. And so I think at least that was something that would be interesting for somebody watching and trying to connect on that in that sense. Um, I I definitely surprised myself because, and I tell the story all the time, but I was so nervous that when I got up in front of everybody, I just completely blanked out. And so I said about 3 words, and it was gone. And I just kind of like started mumbling, it came back, and then I jumped right back into it. And then I was kind of on autopilot because I had practiced it so much. And then before I knew it, I was done. And and at the time, the judges all gave like a little bit of feedback on things to improve or things that they liked. And the one note that I got was, "Oh, it was hard to understand you in the beginning, but once you got into it, it was really entertaining." And I and I always think about that, and it's just because like I played it off as best I could.
I'm sure they're probably giving you a little bit of leeway, knowing that it's an amateur competition first, probably first and foremost. I'm sure they were probably impressed by your resolve to jump back in, and I'm sure as well, right? Like you mentioned, like dynamic and fun, right? Comedic ups and downs in terms of the choice of the script you decided to use for this particular competition. I am actually curious though, when you mentioned, in middle school and high school that you really got into theater, and I'm curious, what are maybe some of the things that helped prep for it, right? Like specifically, like did you have to read monologues, right, as part of theater, right? Like I'm curious, like what are those things that you think really helped with the preparation side of it?
Honestly, it was getting comfortable just being in front of people for the most part. I mean, if you translate that into the competition itself, and also like in voiceover too. I mean, I'm not like in front of like a whole like bunch of people live. A lot of times for voiceover, it's just like the director and the engineer, and maybe a couple of people from the client side, like a writer or somebody else involved in the production process. Mostly, it was just getting the experience and the practice in. So the whole getting to look at a script, breaking it down, understanding the character, understanding their history, understanding their worldview, and then also when you're embodying that character, how are they interacting with the world around them and all the other characters in the scene as well. I think that definitely helped me to prepare for voiceover because when you're in the booth by yourself and you're only playing your character and you're not getting the chance to hear the other person's lines and getting to respond to them, you have to really pull from your own imagination to be able to respond to something organically. Um, and also just being able to cold read, which is getting the script and reading it for the first time and being able to immediately drop in to the moment of what's going on and playing the moment authentically. So yeah, I would say like it was a lot of just like preparation for me to jump into something adjacent.
Cool. I really liked how you mentioned the pulling from the imagination, stepping to a character's worldview. I think that really plays into the script that you probably also chose, right? To really help flesh out the character and also show your range in a way that expresses the character, but also expresses yourself in a variety of different ways. So I'm also curious, right? Like, so that was sort of like kickstarting off your anime career or voice acting anime career. And I'm curious, like, once you realized that you could actually do this, what gave you the momentum to keep doing it?
Honestly, it was just because I loved it so much. It's just so much fun getting to work with other people to create these characters and bring these worlds um, to life. At the time, I did kind of think about whether or not voice acting would be a sustaining career. I know that many in the industry, many voice actors, besides acting, they go into other facets, like, or they also do other things on top of voice acting, such as writing, directing, other production stuff. Um, and for me, like, it was always the voice acting was what I really, really wanted to pursue. Um, and so that's really why I kept up with it. It's just an obsession, really.
I guess what gives you that obsession of voice acting? Is it that you want to be able to play different types of characters, right? Is it, being a part of, let's say, like the anime industry as well, or specifically like the dub voiceover anime industry? Like, what are those other factors that really helped you to, I guess, drive that obsession, the drive, I guess, to be better at your craft?
I think, well, it definitely starts with my love for watching anime. Um, and over time, it's really the community, the actors that I've gotten to meet, that I get to star alongside, and also the directors. A lot of them are very wonderful. I don't know, it's just kind of fun, like the back and forth that we have in the booth, and especially when like if there's something that I might not understand, then the director has to jump in and be like, okay, think of it this way, or try to substitute with something else so that I can emotionally connect and be like, ah, I understand, I get what you want, and then try to deliver it. And there's just something very satisfying when you hit that moment just the way that the director was envisioning. That's just very satisfying. Um, Getting to meet fans has been really nice. I mean, it's really just a big geek out session, getting to meet everybody.
Do you feel that when you're kind of in that booth, or you mentioned like trying to help that director's vision come to life, do you think about your time in stage acting, right, as well? And like, how does that kind of come into play with voice acting?
I would say it's very similar, only in that when you're working on stage, generally you would have a lot more time to really dig deep into these characters. I would have time to read the entire script and get a feel for like the beginning, middle, and end, or if there's like an arc for the character. Getting to know all the other characters and really spending time because we're also memorizing and we're also moving around and embodying them on stage. And then, of course, all the other elements. Really working with the director to, you know, dig deep and really um, understand everything that's happening. Whereas in voiceover, a lot of times we don't know where it's going to end yet. We have an idea of what's going on right now. For me, I often come in and I don't know anything about the project because it's so super top secret. I've signed like all my NDAs, like my entire life away before they even tell me the before they tell me the general synopsis and then things about my character. So I'm very reliant on the director and the team to fill me in as I'm going because otherwise I have no idea where it's going. Like I can understand what's happening right now and my character's motivation here, but we might not know what's going to happen to them later on in the story. That's definitely happened in times where even the director wasn't sure because there's no source material for them to look at. And we've only gotten like half the season and we have to finish dubbing the first half. And then later we'll get the second half to see what happens to everybody.
I guess I wanted to ask, like, do you ever feel that it's kind of just like it's a lot of improv, right? Because you mentioned that you don't have a lot of time to prepare. You're going in, you're getting directed, and not to necessarily like make light of the work, right? Like, or the effort that's involved, but it sounds like there's a lot of thinking on your feet, right, and being quite adaptable, kind of in that moment. Because I'm guessing you have a very limited amount of time for the session that you do need to record.
Yeah, depending on what it is. If it's like original animation or domestic animation, then there would be opportunities to kind of play around and maybe improvise little words or lines here and there. Because at the time, as an actor, I'm getting to work with the team to kind of like mold and shape this character. Even though they have like a base for like what they want this character to be, I'm still bringing an element of myself to this character. Um, so in that sense, it's a little bit different. But for anime, there's already, like the pre-existing performance that we kind of have to draw from and incorporate into our own performances for the dub. If we're talking for dubbing for anime, then there's not a lot of room for improvisation because we have to match lip flap.
What is lip flap? I guess first and foremost, right? Because maybe not everyone may know what lip flap is.
Lip flap is anytime the character opens their mouth or makes any kind of sound. So a lot of times when we're dubbing, we have to match the words to every time they open their mouth. Otherwise, it looks very jarring because it's not fitting. And we want to make it seamless for the viewer to make so that it looks like it's not a dub. And I feel like anime in particular is very, very strict about it. At least we try to be because we have those restrictions. There's not a lot of room for ad libbing on the spot. Unless the writing is a little bit short or too long, then maybe we need to rewrite it so that it fits better. Rather than being good at improvisation, and as an actor, you just have to be very adaptable and nimble, just so that you are open to anything happening, especially in the anime world, because anything can happen at any point. So you just kind of have to be ready to take the punches as they roll.
I kind of want to roll it back